So just now, President tweets he's going to sign this defense bill, which includes Space Force. So is it private or public that's driving the train right now?
Both, all the above. I think that the key takeaway from the second annual Morgan Stanley Space Summit is that from a government perspective, the national security interest at the highest level in the executive branch is very high and really underestimated by the markets. Space is not a nice to have, it's a we have to get this right. And that was a theme from our summit yesterday. At the same time, you need the investor interest too, okay? And investor interest is really going parabolic from a low level. But we had our attendance at the Morgan Stanley Summit double year on year, and investor attendance tripled. So that combination of government prioritization and a capital formation coming together, that's what built so many of our nation's industries, and space is absolutely no exception, and we think investors have to pay close attention to this theme.
At the same time, you're seeing late-stage financing become a little bit more troubled given what we've seen in the public markets and people not generating the IRRs that they were initially hoping for.
Yep.
Are you seeing that spill over into the space investment as well?
That was one of the themes from our private capital formation panel at the summit yesterday was while there maybe isn't a lack of available capital, it's that you have to have the right business model. Okay, you can't just throw assets in space and hope that you're going to have a contribution margin in 5 or 10 years. There may be some businesses that can't afford to lose money and do that for a while, but things like analytics, data, remote sensing, there's certain technologies that can build on even the existing and nascent infrastructure that can generate a margin earlier. And even from the Virgin Galactic perspective, which we recently initiated on, the space tourism business, it's basically fundamentally grounded on technology that's been around for many, many decades. In many ways, it's not science fiction, it's science fact.
How much does it matter now that there's a public equity, as you mentioned, Virgin Galactic, as opposed to so many of these efforts being, well, SpaceX obviously is one side, Blue Origin has different, but they're private. Is that a catalyst sort of for more interest?
Absolutely. So when we use the Morgan Stanley space team, cross-sector effort that we have with the strategic backing of Morgan Stanley to look at this domain, the big markets are communications, transportation, Earth observation. But the human exploration part is critical to increase public awareness and public support. Shortly before Neil Armstrong died, I believe it was on a 60 Minutes interview, he was asked, are you disappointed with the pace of this space program, the U.S. space program? And he said, yes, I hoped we could have done more. When asked why, he said, when we lost our rival, we lost the public support. Now we have some rivalry in space, and that innovation is going to do some pretty exciting things for capital markets and for things I think we can continue to talk about in your program in the years ahead.
When you think about trillion-dollar deficits, right, national debt, interest spending, making cuts to food supplemental programs, how much of that is going to be a pushback on the national security interests in sort of putting a flag in space?
The emphasis is dual purpose. Space, the difficulty of putting a man on the moon, bringing them back alive, the secondary implications for compute, internet, sensor have affected, and we've been monetizing in the velocity of commercial activity, right, of civilian activity. And so every step of the way, that interplay between government stroke national security, which might have an unpleasant undertone, but then the enormous commercial applications, that's what's different this time. So when you get folks like Bezos and Elon Musk involved, while you could have, on the one hand, a scary, national security type, military type conversation, these technologies have direct application to growing access to internet and communications and the many, many thousands of exabytes of data that we need to move around the world sustainably.
So not just national pride, in other words.
It is absolutely not national pride. This is building the future of our world, including as we get distance from Earth. We suspect that as you put humans in space, looking back and getting that overview effect, they're going to come back and they're going to come on your program and they're going to be climate evangelists, for example. When they see the vulnerability of our planet and you see the world without borders. Sorry, I'm getting a little too Christmas.
I like it.
Don't cry. Stop
Greta
crying.
Thunberg's on the cover of
crying?
Time.
I know.
Wipe your eye.
We can take a view right now and just show people the picture, Adam. And get the idea.
Well, there's no substitute to getting someone alive, coming back, and saying, I was there and I saw it. So, you know, and again, from Director Kevin O'Connell, Director of the Office of Space Commerce at our summit yesterday, he said this is bipartisan. There is very little debate on a partisan line of the importance of space at the government level.
Really quick on Tesla, we follow your coverage so closely. We talked about your note earlier this week.
I believe it was last week.
Yes, Porsche-like margins, the whole thing. Why not get rid of the bear case number? Why just jettison that out of the research?
Listen, if you looked at the fixed income markets, and if we were having this conversation on your program just a few months ago, their bonds were trading in the 80s, right? They have debt equal to roughly, 1 times, not quite 1 times, their trailing prior year revenues. It's a very indebted company, so we have a lot of financial leverage. We still have a lot of unproven economics and a lot of volatility, right, and competition. So I would argue that the combination of the leverage and the uncertain outlook, we want to make sure we covered that. And we could debate whether 10 is too aggressive or if it was 90, whether that would be a conversation. Folks, leverage works both ways here, right? And I would remind you, when we first initiated on Tesla in 2011, we had a $70, the stock was 22, we had a $70 target at that time, I emphasize. Our bull case was 150, and our bear case was 0. So you could have just as easily gone back and said, hey, you're adding no value. Perhaps we got lucky along the way, but yes, the emphasis is leverage, and we had to get that risk out there for our clients.
And we don't expect, unlike what he did with Solar City, that he's ever going to actually merge SpaceX into Tesla, right? Back to space. They'll stay separate.
I would never say never, but I don't know anything.
Other than launching a car into space.
I would just tell you this. We've written about this in our research about the ecosystems and how Tesla's cars are producing and consuming massive amounts of data and IoT. It's the Internet of Cars is the mother of all IoT markets, and how having a cyber-secure, redundant, resilient pipe in space may have some benefits. That doesn't mean that the companies need to merge, and I think Elon Musk is really sick of us asking about that on conference calls. I'll let you draw your own conclusions, but there's room to cooperate, and you could ask Gwen Shotwell and others that question and have your own discussion.